Chapter 15. Bandits. Biff shot a quick look at Chubba. He wanted to see his friend's reaction to the startling appearance of these men who looked as if they had sprung from the age of primitive man. Good? Bad? Chubba would know. Chubba's eyes roved over the group. He turned his head quickly from man to man, turning around to complete the circle. A frown on the native boy's face gave Biff his answer. Chubba was worried. Man, oh man, did you ever see anything like that bunch? Muscles asked. They're from way out of nowhere. There was every reason for Muscles to be amazed. The men were small but squat and powerfully built. Their eyes were slanted in broad, dirty faces, the color of stained copper. Wide, cruel mouths turned down on either side. Scraggly strands of wiry hair sprouted from ragged caps made of mangy fur. Their legs were wrapped in rags. Coats, if they could be called coats, were made of skins of wild animals, mountain goats, deer. One of the men wore the skin of the Himalayan black bear. They stood in silence, their small beady eyes watching for any move on the part of Muscles and the boys. Two of the men held short, thick clubs in their hands. Another held a long stick. Biff noticed that on the end a wicked knife had been attached by thongs. Others held long, gleaming curved knives in their hands. Only one man carried a gun, a short, two-barreled shotgun. It was an old gun. Somebody had sawed off the barrel. It could deal out body-ripping shots at short range. Who are they, Chubba? Biff asked. You mean what are they? Muscles cut in. Bandits, Chinese bandits, Chubba replied. They bad, very bad. They're not soldiers then, not members of any patrol. Chubba shook his head. No, much worse. These people roam the hills and mountains. They steal, kill. They like wild men. Sometimes come into town, but most times live like tribe. Sleep in caves, eat anything they can kill. What do they want with us? Biff asked. Rob us, maybe kill us if we try to fight. Some chance, Muscles cut in again. Why, I can take on that whole gang single-handed. Muscles towered over the bandits. He was bigger and weighed more than any two of the bandits together. Not so sure, Muscles, Chubba said quietly. These men fight and kill bears, tigers. Only use their knives. Only guy that worries me is that one with the sawed-off shotgun, Muscles decided. Why don't they say something, Chubba? What are they waiting for? Biff asked. Chubba shrugged his shoulders. Can't they talk? Can you understand their language? They talk, sure, but be hard for Chubba to understand them. They speak what you call tribe dialect, some Chinese words, some words only they know. Can they understand you? Sure, they understand most Chinese talk. Not all words, but enough. Ask them what they want. Chubba swallowed. He directed a rapid string of Chinese words at the man carrying the gun. The gun carrier grunted and spoke in a deep, guttural voice to the man beside him. Did you get that, Chubba? Chubba shook his head. The gun carrier took one step forward. He looked Muscles carefully up and down. Next his eyes swept over Biff. Then he spoke, turning his eyes on Chubba. He spoke slowly. Sometimes moments of silence would appear between his spaced words. He says they want all things we have. Gunman speaker says he wants clothes of the giant man. My clothes? Fat chance, Muscles snarled. The bandit spoke again. He says open up bundles. He wants to see what we have. Biff knelt down. His and Chubba's bulky bundles were together. Biff started untying the nearest one, which happened to be Chubba's. If we give them our things, will they let us alone? Biff asked. Chubba can't say. Maybe so-so. Maybe no. Maybe they give us this. Chubba brought his hand swiftly across his throat. Biff felt a sickening sensation in his stomach. Feeling around in Chubba's bundle, Biff's hand struck an oblong object. It felt like a box. Biff carefully lifted the cloth from which the bundle was made. He raised it so that the bandits would be unable to see what the box was. If the situation hadn't been such a dangerous one, Biff would have laughed. Chubba had brought with him his evil spirit box, the one Muscles had frightened Chubba with the first morning Biff was in camp. Touching the box, an idea came into Biff's head. Chubba, quick, tell me more about these bandits. Are they superstitious? I mean frightened by strange things, things they'd never seen before. Much afraid, big fear of spirits. Biff nodded his head. I got an idea. Think we could scare them with your evil spirit box? Excitement danced in Chubba's eyes. They'd be scared like crazy. More scared than Chubba was. Okay, we'll try it. Now you tell them something like this. Tell them we are protected by magic of the gods. The evil spirit will put its hand on them unless they let us go. They are not to bother us. Make it good. Bow down and stuff like that. Look to the sky and make like you're calling the spirit. Chubba, catch wise. Make big show. Okay, now at some point when you're putting on your act, when the bandits are all looking at you, I'll yell fly. When I do, I'll toss your spirit box in the air. You swing round and catch it. I'll have it started. You hold it up high when the siren's going. Then place it on the ground and jump back when the hand comes out. Tell them that's the hand of the evil spirit reaching out to touch them. Chubba was grinning now. Muscles stood there, hands on hips, shaking his head. Chubba turned back to the bandit leader. He hunched up his shoulders. He twisted his face into an ugly leer. Then he began speaking. He spoke at first in a sing-song voice. He spoke faster and faster, raising his voice higher. He dropped down and touched the ground 3 times with his head. Up he leapt, extending his arms skyward. Chubba was putting on a good show. Biff watched the faces of the bandits closely. There was no expression, yet their eyes followed every movement Chubba made. Biff took the spirit box out. No one saw him. Even Muscles was fascinated by Chubba's writhing, his sing-song chanting. Biff touched the button, activating the box. Fly, he called out. He tossed the box in the air, high enough so that it came down over Chubba's head. It almost appeared to be falling from the sky. Chubba caught the box deftly. Again he spoke to the bandits. He raised the box high over his head, just as the first faint whine of the siren began. The siren scream rose higher and higher. Quickly Chubba placed the box on the ground and stepped back. The lid of the box slowly opened. Biff looked again at the bandits. The faces without expression now looked curious, then terrified. The lid of the box raised. The plastic hands snaked out. Stark terror now seized the bandits. They cringed back. One of them, unable to stand it any longer, turned, broke, and ran. He was followed by another and another. Only the leader remained, staring at the spirit box as if spellbound. Muscles went into action. He dived for the box. He snatched it from the ground, turned, and with the box extended in his outstretched hands, he moved towards the bandit chief. This was too much. With a horrified shriek, the bandit chief turned and raced down the slope after his companions. All were running as if they were really pursued by demons. Muscles quickly reset the box, so that the scream of the siren, raising to its highest pitch, seemed to be following close to the bandits' ears. Muscles put the box back on the ground. He slapped his huge thighs. He threw back his head and roared with laughter. Biff and Chubba joined in. All 3 laughed until they sank to the ground, their voices shaking as they tried to talk. Finally, Muscles heaved his shoulders and took a deep breath. Ever see anything like that? Those guys were really scared. Took off like jet fighters. When I think that I sent to the States for that fool toy to scare Chubba, well... Never knew it was going to save your life, did you? Still think $20 was too much for it? Biff said, trying to control his laughter. I level with you now, Muscles. I real scared first time I see Spirit Box, Chubba confessed. But those guys, they really did think the evil spirit was going to put the hand on them, Muscles said. Here's one time I'm glad you can't tell good from evil, Biff said. Think they'll come back, Chubba? Muscles asked. Never. They really gone. Give us the big go-round now. Not ever want to see us and Box again. The spirit really moved them, eh, Biff? Muscles said. Biff laughed, but Muscles' joke was over Chubba's head. It was almost broad daylight now. The sun was rising. Biff stood up. We'd better get going. Maybe we can reach Jaraminka by nightfall. Okay by me, Muscles agreed. Let's make with the feet, Chubba. Biff looked northward. Nestled somewhere in the foothills of the Thanglung Mountains was the outpost of Jaraminka. Uncle Charlie might be there. He might be the bait being used to bring Biff and his companions into a trap. It was a risk they would have to take. Chapter 16, Strange Discovery. In the distance, perhaps 100 miles away, the towering peak of Mount Minyakonka, reaching 25,000 feet skyward, could be seen. The day was clear, crystal blue clear. The air was chill and would remain so until the sun's rays bore down more strongly. "You better take the lead, Chuba," Muscles said. Off we go, searching for Jaraminka. He sang his last sentence to the tune of the Air Force song, "Into the Wild Blue Yonder." "Hold it a minute," Biff said. "You know, if we head straight for Jaraminka, we might be walking right into the hands of the enemy. Wouldn't they expect us to take the most direct route?" "You got something there, Biff, my boy. What you're cooking?" Muscles asked. "I think we should head west, northwest, rather than due north. Head for Minyakonka. Then, when we've gone further inland, cut back north and make our approach to Jaraminka from the west." "Good idea, Biff. Let's move out." The three trudged westward, climbing. Big, craggy rocks dotted the sides of the slopes they scrambled up. Often they had to make wide detours to get round a cliff that rose straight up. After 2 hours of scrambling, slipping, struggling against the rugged terrain, Muscles called a halt. "We'd better take a break." The rarefied air of the altitude had all three panting for breath. At Muscles' words, Biff and Chuba sank to the ground without a word. Muscles flung himself to the ground beside them. Slowly their breathing became more even, strength flowed back into their bodies. Muscles sat up, pulled out a cigarette. He lit it, took 3 deep puffs, and tossed it away. "Burns my lungs at this altitude. How far you figure we've gone, kids?" "Like you said last night, if we measure the ups and downs, then we've covered quite a distance. But I doubt if we cover more than 5 miles straight away," Biff answered, and Chuba nodded in agreement. "That plateau where Jack landed me must be just a short distance south of here. I'm making landmarks so we can spot the place when we come back," Muscles explained. Biff looked the area over carefully too. 2 peaks rose straight up, miles apart. A smaller peak was centered exactly between the 2 taller ones. "Just like the letter W," Biff said to himself. He would remember that. "Think we better turn north now, Biff?" Muscles said. "Be a lot easier traveling. Faster, too. We'll be moving along the valley. Not so much of this up and down stuff. Particularly the up. I've had enough of that. I'll take my climbing in a plane." "I guess so, Muscles. We'll head up the valley now, Chuba," Biff directed. They set off again. Traveling was easier. They moved along briskly. The air was becoming warmer, and soon the floor of the valley sent out shimmering heat waves in front of them. Except for brief pauses, no one called for a break until Muscles looked at his watch. "It's noon. How about a breather and something to eat?" Chuba broke out his supply of food. His goodies, Biff had named them. "This is food?" Muscles asked skeptically, looking at the portion Chuba handed him. He ate it, but his face twisted comically as he tasted and then quickly gulped the food. After half an hour rest, during which Muscles complained bitterly about the menu, they were ready to continue. Their progress up the valley continued smoothly for the first hour. Rounding a sharp bend, the valley came to an abrupt end. "Now, what's this little obstacle placed in our path?" Muscles asked. "Wish it were just a little obstacle," Biff replied. Directly ahead of them, the ground angled sharply upward. Above it leveled off like the outside rim of a giant football stadium. "We go right or we go left, Chuba?" Muscles asked. "We'll go straight up," Biff replied. "Let's see what's on top. Surely can't tell from here. After we take a look-see, we'll probably bear to the right. Jaraminka must be off that way." Biff pointed slightly to the northeast. "Think so, Chuba?" Chuba nodded his head. They mounted towards the rim of the top of the sharp incline. In places, the ground rose so sharply they had to pull themselves up, grabbing the stunted trees for handhold. Nearing the top, they ran into a barrier that stopped them cold. This was a man-made obstacle, the last thing to expect in this wild, remote country. It was a heavy, metal-barred fence. It stood higher than Muscles' head, and 3 strands of ugly barbed wire were stretched along the top. What the... Muscles' eyes bugged out in astonishment. The fence stretched out to the right and left in a long curve. The ground was cleared on both sides of the fence, forming a path easy to walk along. "This we have to find out about," Biff said. "Why fence in a mountain top unless there's something inside that's top secret?" "That fence could be electrified. Stay clear of it," Muscles warned. "Could be," Biff said, "but I doubt it. It would take a lot of power to do it. Besides, where would the power come from? Let's follow it to the right, but be alert. Good fences don't mean good neighbors here. I've a hunch these good fences mean good guards every few feet." They followed the curving fence, cautiously and on the alert. Biff took the lead. They continued until Biff figured they had covered 90 degrees of a gigantic circle. The fence remained an equal distance from the rim at the top as they followed the path. "Hold it!" Biff held up his hand. Then he motioned Muscles and Chuba forward. "Look!" Biff pointed to a gap, wide enough and deep enough for a man's body to slip beneath the fence. "Some animal must have been as curious as we are," Biff said. "Something burrowed under the fence." "Well, what are we waiting for?" Muscles grinned. He dropped to his hands and knees and wiggled through the opening. Chuba followed, and Biff brought up the rear. Crouching low, the 3 approached the top of the rise. They crawled the last few feet, reached the rim, and raised their heads slowly. What they saw made them all gasp. They were looking into an immense bowl, covering an area so great it was impossible to take it in with one look. They pivoted their heads, following the rim of the bowl. The activity on the floor of the bowl made them squint their eyes in disbelief. Everywhere they looked, they saw bulldozers, huge cranes, steam shovels, and thousands of men working furiously. The bottom of the bowl was so far away that the working men seemed like small moving specks. The noises of the steam shovels digging into the earth and the whines of the huge crane arms turning on their metal discs rose only dimly to the ears of the astonished spectators. Towards the opposite side of the huge bowl, 2 cement runways in the shape of a plus sign were dotted with planes. In still another section of the bowl, great steel trylons, resembling oversized high-tension wire supporters, reared skyward. "What do you make of it?" Biff asked Muscles. The burly mechanic scratched his head. "You got me. Could be a lot of things. It's got to be something mighty important, something really top secret to build this gigantic complex in this remote spot." "And how did they get all this stuff in here?" Muscles asked himself. "I think," Biff said, "we'd better get away from here, but fast." Muscles nodded in agreement. The 3 backed down, reached the fence, scrambled beneath it, and headed for Jaraminka. Making as much speed as they could, they put distance between themselves and their startling discovery. Biff's mind was filled with questions. Foremost among them was one which kept coming back like an exam question he couldn't answer. Did this tremendous secret construction job have anything to do with Uncle Charlie's flight into China?